Today is going to be all about responsible leadership. We are today talking about the subjects on how microlearning improves employee performance and engagement. We've got two people, experts in this field, that are willing to join us today. Today's presenter is going to be Jean Crous. He's the executive lead of the Standard Bank Group People and Culture. And the reflector of today is going to be Olukayode Olusope. He's the senior program consultant of the Terra Academy for the Arts, TAFTA. Welcome to the both of you. I hope that there's some questions after this presentation and reflection. So we're going to do the presentation first. After that, we hear the reflection by Olukayode. And then there's the opportunity for every one of you to ask your questions. Please share your questions in the Q&A button that's on the bottom of your screen, or using the chats that you see also on the bottom of your screen. If you put in your questions, I will read them out, and hopefully either Jean or Olukayode can answer your questions. Let's start. So Jean, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So I think we'll all appreciate that the world of work and the world of learning has in fact changed for employees quite drastically. And just as a bit of context, some statistical data points and interesting facts of recent research. It is said that most employees have only about 24 minutes a week, which equates to about 1% of their work week, to attend to training. Studies have also shown that the human brain can only focus on a task for an average of about 20 minutes before we start losing concentration. This is a very interesting one. The human being's average attention span has shrunk from just 8 seconds compared to what it was around 12 seconds in the year 2000. And then in closing, today with attention spans decreasing and information overload increasing, employees actually don't engage with training as much as we may want them to by using traditional methods. And this is where the conversation around microlearning becomes relevant. If we look at what microlearning is, conceptually and at the highest possible level, it can be understood as large chunks of information, large chunks of learning content broken down into smaller digestible elements. These are typically easier to consume as well as to retain the information by employees. If we can deliver this content in short, focused bursts, microlearning makes it a lot easier also for employees to absorb that information and retain in the longer term. It actually encourages learners to apply what they learn immediately. And I think that's also where one of the benefits of microlearning comes in, is it's available immediately, it's digestible immediately, and it can be applied immediately. So ways in which to deliver microlearning would be by using rich media, and I'll give you some examples a bit later, on multiple devices. I think in the world of work today also, and just as a society, we rely a lot on devices. There's a lot of information out there, and it's how we structure that information to what's relevant in the moment when the information is needed. By making that available to employees at the right time and in the right format and in the right kind of volume as well, it does engage learners a lot more and inspires them to want to dig deeper, to find the information and maybe move to the next phase of their knowledge in the workplace. Then I think what I've already said is it's typically quick and accessible, just in time. Should not exceed 2, 3, or 5 minutes, perhaps, depending on the format you use, depending on the content. But it being microlearning, it's short bursts of information that is provided and learning in that moment. Microlearning can be accessed when and how they choose. And I think for me, a simple reference, which is easy to remember, it's anywhere. So it's available anywhere, at any time, and on any device. And most importantly, microlearning is typically tied to one concept of specific learning or an objective perhaps you want to achieve, the learners to achieve. It's one concept at a time, one specific element that you'd like to enhance knowledge on, rather than comprehensive kind of loads of information and overbearing them with information when they need just a little bit. So on the converse of microlearning, it's also good to understand macrolearning, because it makes it easier for us to also then understand how microlearning plays a role and where best to apply or consume microlearning. In a macrolearning environment, typically we want people to learn something new. That could be extended courses lasting hours or days, typically in the format of classrooms, maybe large online courses and educational programs. It also combines practice and graded exercises. So, as you learn incrementally, you start becoming more au fait and more practice at what you do. And incrementally, you can grade macro learning to more complex scenarios, more complex learning. Macro learning typically is instructor-led and may require coaching and support after the formal training intervention. And the content is authoritative, so it's pretty much consume, digest, and apply as you've received it, and educational in terms of delivery mode. Microlearning, on the other hand, is I need help right now. I need to know while I'm on the job, how do I do one small step perhaps in what I need to perform. Should take me less than 10 minutes to do that, or to find the answer, understand what I need to do, and to also have the opportunity to apply it. Again, bringing back the concept of a single learning, a single skill, a single concept. Examples of how that's delivered, and I'll elaborate on this a little bit later. Consider small videos just in the time. I mean, sometimes also TikTok and social media elements come to play in this. Small text inputs available, maybe in a chat, chat bots, etc. Small articles, learning games. Again, I'll elaborate on that. Microlearning is also easily searchable and indexed. So there's a bit of a trick when it comes to making microlearning part of your learning delivery mechanism and your employee learning path. And it has to be something that in the moment they can very easily find. Of course, they've got to be educated and pointed to the information, but there's a trick in that as well. Content is typically also sorted in microlearning by quality and by relevance. And by that we mean relevant in terms of just the question that is asked that the user might need. He might be on a call, he or she, on a call with a client. It might be a contact center environment. There's a very particular product question. A keyword search could bring up the right answer, rather than lengthy, elaborate kind of definitions and expansive answers to what's needed. Microlearning, also consider if the content you make available to the employee is useful, if it's accurate, and if it's relevant. And that comes to the life cycle management of the microlearning, making microlearning available and managing a microlearning ecosystem. Always make sure that it remains relevant, accurate, and useful for the employee. So when it comes to implementing microlearning, these are very basic, I think sometimes very logical considerations at face value. But as a starting point to consider building a microlearning environment or microlearning capability, you have to know your learners. There are different age groups in the organizations. There are different preferences to how people learn. And it's important to understand what is the right mechanism for the audience you want to address as well. Typically, you would identify the training needs that you want to facilitate through the microlearning vehicle or mechanism, and then move ahead to develop the content. Developing the content should take into consideration, again, whether it is a lot of information that has to be provided in more logical kind of smaller bits and chunks, or whether it is just a key element, a key word, a key phrase, a key step in a process, but has to be considered when that content is developed fit for purpose for that particular requirement. It should include relatable examples. So I recall compliance training as an example. very often customer-facing, in a customer-facing environment, you'd be faced with scenarios where your customer information is very important. And to simply provide a statement in terms of what needs to be done is all good and well, but give them live examples, provide employees with relatable examples of how to apply this knowledge in the workplace for them to also be able to learn and do that maybe offline before they apply it for the first time. Choosing your platform, I think that's also guided by your learning strategy. As an organization, the learning fraternity often would guide us there in terms of learning mechanism, learning pathways, our electronic media available in the organization, SharePoints, intranet sites, and our route to making learning available for employees. Key to this is to keep it engaging. And again, you'll see when I talk to some of the examples, it's actually quite interesting, and it's such an energizing topic to really look at in the organization, because once we see how we can make it engaging for employees, we'll also find those moments where the light bulbs go on and consider certain elements, themes in your business that you can start translating and experimenting with microlearning. And then importantly, as with any life cycle and ecosystem, there has to be ongoing monitoring once you've implemented to make sure, as I raised on the previous slide, information should always be relevant and accurate and available in the format that it is needed by the consumer. So here are just a couple of examples of how to deploy and develop microlearning opportunities for employees. Again, I mentioned earlier, there's an array of options you have, and these are just a few, in fact, of those, but some of the ones that might stimulate thinking around this conversation. Some of the logical ones, mini audio clips, maybe provide a small sound clip. We work in environments where earphones and availability around mobile devices, laptops and phones is not a problem. And being able to listen to perhaps just a short answer to a question you might have, or a small example of how to perform a step, an instruction could also be provided through these audio clips, one example. Infographics, it's the condensed version of a lot of information in one place, easily accessible, easily available, and also something that is easy to consume from, if you will. Digital flashcards, we all know, true or false kind of questions. I think before I continue in this, when it comes to some of these examples, you'll also appreciate that it's one thing to provide the learning, it's something else also to assess that that learning has been taken on board, that the learning intervention has been effective. And when it comes to learning, we have to assess in different formats. And true or false questions could be one of those mechanisms to use as well as part of microlearning. Fast facts, the did you knows kind of scenarios about particular products or services in your organization. Just in time, again, the right facts available to your employees. Job aids, job tools, your toolboxes. Again, mechanisms that make it available for the employee to perform perhaps particular tasks, process steps, how to perform that. By clicking on the button, takes you straight to the answer you need, or to that element in the business process that needs to be accessed. Multiple choice options, again, when it comes to assessment. So it's keeping it short rather than elaborate kind of phrases to work through and figure out kind of a response to that in writing. Podcasts, pre-recorded, available, again, anywhere, anytime on any device for learners to go back and listen to. Quizzes makes it fun. I think most of us enjoy the odd bit of a challenge of testing your general knowledge or information about a particular topic. And much like fast facts would apply here, quizzes could also test the understanding. And again, is an encouraging way for a learner to establish by themselves what they may not know or may not know enough of, rather than it being instructed, saying, oh, you've got to kind of sharpen the pencil on your knowledge here. This is very much self-directed discovery and learning as well. Simulations, very important one here. making available simulations in an illustrative, maybe again a short video or content that gives the learner an opportunity to observe how perhaps to perform a particular task, how to handle a particular call, how to work in a particular system before they start doing it themselves. Interactive parallax-based scrolling very much equates to gamification as an example. I won't cover all of these, but your interactive parallax-based scrolling, think of an avatar working through a maze in a game. And as that avatar works, the avatar works through the maze, they experience obstacles, they overcome the obstacle, and there's, let's say, 5 points or 10 points. Encourages the learner to move on to the next, but at every point, there's an element of learning, which obviously they need to respond to, and if they get it right, they move on. And so as they scroll through the interactive engagement, whether it's a game or whatever it might be, the learner picks up the learning and again encourages that deeper learning as they move on in that gaming interface. Short videos, branching scenarios is one where if this, then that contexts would apply. So, you know, if A and you choose B, then this is the route to follow. But if B, then there's a different route to follow, again, to guide employees in their work. And then typical do's and don'ts as well. So towards a closing on the benefits of microlearning, I would summarize those in 4 key categories. Number one, and I think one of the big benefits of microlearning is it delivers on-demand learning. Again, the reference to anywhere, anytime, on any device. When I need it and when I access it, it's available to me. Another big benefit definitely is increased engagement through these mechanisms that you make available that suit the audience that you would like to address in their learning requirements. It has been, research has proven, and has been established that microlearning definitely improves retention as well. Purely because the employee feels engaged, he gets deeper into his work and really understand what they do. And if there's a need for them to learn, it's in a way that suits them as well. And perhaps a side note to this as well, there's cost benefit to be had in microlearning, developing a microlearning pathway for learners as well. So some statistics to call out just as a background to this as well. It's been established that a 17 improvement in knowledge transfer can be observed when information is provided in smaller chunks rather than in bigger volumes, perhaps less consumable. So definitely, I think that's noteworthy. Learners, through applying microlearning or adopting microlearning as a style, learners, and particularly those who prefer mobile learning methodologies, dedicate on average an additional 40 minutes of learning in their own time in the average week. And remember, I started saying that there's 24 minutes available on average to an employee these days. Through microlearning and making it engaging for them, they actually want to engage and offer 40% more time of their week. Just again, when we spoke about, one of my first points earlier was, you know the audience that you want to provide for. Microlearning has been proven to be a preferred format for many employees or for many learners. And 50% of millennial students have indicated that they would rather be drawn to microlearning as a format than formal classroom training. On the cost effective or cost efficiency element, microlearning resources can take up to 300% less time and significant cost saving to produce than traditional courses. And then fits into any workday seamlessly. Again, when the employee has the time, when the employee has the need, they can complete the learning in minutes, provided it is accessible and easy for them to find and digest. Right.
Perfect. Thank you, Jean. Thank you so much.
I'm a little bit short of time, but I think that could be a good thing for Q&A.
It's only a 5 minutes more or less. So that's all okay. Thank you so much. Very inspiring. Kayode, can you reflect upon what has been said?
Okay, thank you very much. Our speaker today has packed so much into 5 minutes. It's like a whole day of learning, really. He spoke about the background of it, the context. He spoke about the ways to use microlearning. He spoke about the role of microlearning in the context of the broader learning strategy of an organization. He spoke about how to implement very clear guidelines on implementation and a whole module, a whole gamut of an array of options to consider in microlearning. And then he crowned everything with the sweet, attractive, appealing benefits of microlearning. Now let's bring it home. In Nigeria, in Nigeria, we have a lot of challenges in learning and development. The first challenge that we usually have is decision makers, have very tight options when it comes to budget. So microlearning is the answer when the management is worried about spending so much money on learning and development, because as we have been told, it has the potential capacity to deliver learning at much cheaper, almost 300% cheaper, cost. Secondly, the challenge of having employees leave their duty posts and looking at the constant pressure of today's world is really an issue that have pulled down the desire of many organizations from pursuing learning. Now, that is no longer there because 5 minutes break, taking on a regular basis can actually deliver much more. Now, let me bring it down to BSN, because I believe so many people here would be students of BSN or some other institutions of pursuing one education or the other. Now, the trend right now, what is happening right now is there's a lot of increase in ADHD. It's becoming what ordinarily would be a disorder before is becoming more like the natural order of things, especially among the young generation. Now, what is the solution to distraction? What is the solution to sitting down to get your work done, your assignments, and every other thing done in school? Interestingly, a microlearning approach can I'm sorry, I just realized my video was on. A microlearning approach can actually be the solution to to addressing learning challenges, in our programs and different educational pursuits that we are all pursuing. So let's assume that you're having challenge working on your and actually this is what I am doing currently. I'm one of the MBA students, and how many apps and theory tests that we've got to do while managing this with demands of work and demands of family and all of that. So what do? Instead of looking for 3 hours at a stretch, which you may not easily get, why not have chunks of time, short, even if it's 15 minutes, even if it's 20 minutes, if you have 30 minutes of meaningful engagement, and you do that up to 3 or 4 times in a day, consistently, you would actually get better results than a situation where you are looking for 3 hours and you don't have that luxury in your schedule. So with this, anything in the world can be attained with consistency, and I think that is what makes that is the ingredient that we need to add to microlearning. Microlearning needs to be consistent. Microlearning needs to be strategic. Microlearning needs to be organized. Macrolearning cannot be left to the whims and caprices of the moment and the individual, especially in the context of an organization. Why? Because learning is a very primary aspect of inestimable value in an organization. It's the driver of innovation, is the driver of sustainability, is the driver of productivity, is the driver of profitability. So if that is the case, organizations need to get on board the microlearning trend. We need to become flexible, and we need to be open-minded to new approaches to learning. I think at this point, I'm going to hand over the mic back, to the organizer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kayode. Thank you very much. Deep insights. So people, this is the time for you to ask your questions. You can do so in the Q&A, using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, or you can use the chat room. So please type in your question and I will read them out to the presenter or the reflector. It would be nice if you state which one you want to ask something. First question from me, Jean. The big question in my mind, being of course the dean of a business school that does hybrid online and physical education, is this form of micro-learning on top of that, or are we still in need of using, let's say, the physical contact moments to be able to discuss stuff?
I would go with the latter. It is certainly one of the mechanisms in your learning basket, if you will, the modes of learning for employees or for learners. Mm-hmm. This is not the silver bullet that solves for all learning requirements. I think fit for purpose, in some instances, learners have to attend classroom training or formal training, whether it's online, in-person, facilitator-led. And in others, perhaps more appropriate to on-the-job learning. Microlearning would be one of those scenarios or one of those modes that employees can fall back on when an instructor is not available, when a coach is not available. It's self-directed learning in a way, in the moment that I need the information. Right. I would do it supplementary rather than one or the other.
Yeah, on top of it. That's the way I thought. There's a remark from Ijo in the Q&As. Big lessons can feel overwhelming, but microlearning makes it easy, short, focused lessons keep employee engaged, help them learn faster and boost performance effortlessly. Imagine a workplace that remembers more, applied skills better, and stays motivated. That's the power of microlearning in action. So a positive comment, I think, but not a question. And then a question from Jirima Tona. How does the implementation of microlearning strategies impact employees' ability to retain and apply knowledge in real-world scenarios? Did you get a question, either Kayode or Jean?
Okay, yes. And actually, that's what we have been addressing. How does the microlearning enhance the ability of employees to apply what they have learned in real world scenario? That's the question. Okay, so the microlearning actually has an edge when it comes to application. Why? Because most of the microlearning approaches and formats are repeatable. So if, for example, I have learned something and I want to apply it, okay? Usually the gap between learning and application is that what I've learned, I don't understand, or I have learned, I don't remember, okay? And when such happens, you can always go back, repeat the video if, for example, it's a video, okay? And, the gap in understanding can always be immediately applied to the real life scenario. Whereas if I had gone for 3 days retreat somewhere, you cannot go back to the 3 days retreat, and sometimes the notes you took, you didn't take you didn't take up to 10% of what was said and what was transmitted. So the microlearning has a better head to ensure that what is learned is practicalized. But let's also put something to the fore here. Learning is a deliberate activity, right? Teaching can be compelled, but learning is voluntary. It is the subject of the learning, which is the learner, has to take responsibility. He or she has to take responsibility for ensuring that it is effective. Okay, so that has to come to the fore. Where that responsibility has been taken, where that leadership, because don't forget we are talking the context of leadership, where that leadership responsibility has been taken, what microlearning does is to provide a tool to make the applicability easier. I think I will stop there because okay. It's a very deep topic. We can go on and on about it.
It's a passionate answer, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I was wondering, just so you introduce microlearning to an organization, John, and then you have to select topics, I guess, or don't you? Because you don't want your employees to learn something that you don't want them to learn, and to point out the important stuff for your organization at that time. So is it difficult to create that database of learnings, or don't you do it at all? What's the general idea?
Good question, John. Thank you. Most certainly, I think it is a skill, firstly, and it takes applied developers to really understand what they are developing and who the audience is, again, that they would be providing for. This is where the conversation about creating learning pathways comes to play, because you can point, again, to Olukayode's comment just now. Learning is self-directed. You have the appetite to learn, you've got a need to learn, and you go and fetch or look for the information to learn from. And in establishing learning pathways, you can make the tools available that have the answers and point the learner. So if it is structured in a way or designed in a way that the structure follows a logical route to the answer, you can point the learner in that design to go to LinkedIn Learning, to go to Degreed for the answer, to simply click somewhere and find the video that has the answer to the question that they might have, or to the infographic that has the information they need when speaking to a client. So it is all about the design in the learning pathway for the total learning requirement that will answer that question. It's really applying yourself to what's needed in the design.
Close to my question, there's a question from Joop van Nierop. Perhaps that alterates your answer, but I don't know. His question is, how can management efficiently arrange content for microlearning when it comes to content and delivery? Take into account the time and the effort this takes.
Establishment of your learning libraries. And again, on the back end, the design of how those learning libraries can be accessed, the volume of information that sits there and the applicability, the relevance of the information for the learning requirement that is there. So it becomes what comes back to how you design your on the front end, the learning experience, using the learning libraries, the learning content, and the learning vehicles that the learner would interact with, again, as a package to deliver that learning experience.
Thank you. Anything to add to that, Kayode?
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, it's about having actually a learning strategy that directly delivers the organization's objectives. Okay, so and the learning strategy determines what to learn, and understanding of the learners delivers how to learn it. Now, the structuring it now depends on understanding the process flow of how the information is needed, such that the information is delivered around the time that it is needed, and that delivers much more results, because when you teach, when you are delivering learning at a time when it is needed, you get better results than when it is just when people feel they are learning for learning's sake, or they are learning for the organization's sake. They need to see that this learning is going to affect my productivity and my performance. And when they understand that, that actually produce better results.
Beautiful. Okay, that brings us to an end already. So I know there are a lot more questions pending, but the time is up. So this is the moment I would like to thank Jean Crous and Kayode for their contribution today. We're going to do it again next week, and same time, same place. And next week is going to be all about leading organizational change for sustainability goals. So might be really interesting again, a good topic for next week. Thank you for participating today, and I hope to see you all back again next Tuesday. Thank you.